And Mike, we mentioned the podcast was about sitting with your feelings today. It's a little bit difficult to do that when those feelings aren't necessarily very comfortable. So, I'm thinking things like depression, anxiety, things like that.
Yeah, that's why we don't do it. But it's a really useful and quite a profoundly simple thing to do, is actually sit with them. And it's something I certainly do a lot with clients I see, whether or not it's a craving, like, an addiction or something they want to stop doing, an urge, physical pain, an emotion they have that they want to release. You have to feel it. That's how it works, is you feel into it. And so the practice we did was, I was just asking questions, based on what you were feeling. Is it hot? Is it cold? What's the depth? Is it moving? Is it still, etc.? And when I work with people individually, I'll get them to actually say out loud. So I'm kind of tracking what they're reporting. And the effects can be absolutely amazing. These sensations can drop away, they can switch off, they can rest, relax, or suddenly they start feeling like something completely different. Sadness can feel kind of relaxing or slightly pleasant. It's just, there's no right answer, but once you start exploring sensations rather than ignoring them, there's lots of learning to be had.
And this sort of links in a little bit to two things that I saw on your page recently. One was a wonderful review that somebody put up from having tried mindfulness with you. And again, link to depression, because sometimes if you're going through depression, it can feel so incredibly overwhelming that you would think, oh, mindfulness won't help that. But this user was saying genuinely it had a massive effect on him.
Yeah, and yes, and in a very short space of time. It's a hugely profound practice. And when people say, well, what is it then? Well, it's just you paying attention to what's happening in you. And you think, surely that can't do anything. Well, no, it does everything. That's why it's so simple. It's not something new. It's something that's kind of hardwired into us, our ability to pay attention and focus into whatever we choose. And, as Beth said, when we do choose, with guidance, to tune in and feel in and focus into sadness, depression, grief, pain, that craving for the next cigarette, suddenly you realise that you have much more power than you thought. It feels like it's in charge. Well, it's not. You're bigger than it for a start. And so you start to realise, it really only has the power I invest in it. And when I stop doing that, when I deconstruct it by talking about the texture of it or the heat or suddenly it just becomes a sensation.
So I'm going to ask a question then for all those people who are maybe thinking about going on holiday at the moment. Is that time of year? School's come to an end. People are going away. What if you have anxiety of flying, fear of flying? Because that's a sensation at the end of the day. I'm not looking at you, Beth. Is this something that you could utilise even if you're sort of on the plane or in advance or...
Yeah, the whole way through, and it's a common theme, with people I work with, and I think, is it Virgin Airways now? They have a mindfulness channel that you can actually listen to on the plane. So Richard Branson's on board with mindfulness.
Oh, he's on board.
He's on board, yeah. So yes, it is, and I mean, for a start, you could listen back to some of the podcasts here, especially the See, Hear, Feel practice, the body scans and things like that, the one we've just done. So practicing mindfulness anyway boosts your calm and your focus, so that when you're packing and going towards the airport, etc., you will feel generally calmer. When you're in the queue, for the security, you're able to just be aware of your feet on the ground, your breath moving in your body. That takes up your focus rather than the panicking thoughts and etc. When you're on the plane, I read something before from someone doing Shinzen Young's practice, which I've done here, and she had a child screaming next to her. She had anxiety on the plane herself, and it was a child who was not enjoying it either during a 4-hour flight. So she thought she'd try the See, Hear, Feel practice. So she started to look out of the window and become really kind of absorbed in the details of the clouds and the play of the light, and she made up her own label, which was See Beauty. So whenever she saw something that was to her interesting, beautiful, she would label it in her mind. See beauty, see. And she said suddenly it was, the flight was over. She became absorbed in something really nourishing compared to just churning around in those get me out of here feelings. So that's it. And you know, part of that is just to let yourself kind of settle in and sit in with the knot in your stomach, the panic in your chest, and breathe.
So, Beth, when you go away, I've got one for you.
Okay.
See gin.
Find the gin.
Yeah.
See
Let's
it
focus on the
and
gin.
focus on that. Mike